Hey y'all, it's Laura and I'm back with a Scraplift Sunday. So today's layout is by Melissa Vining and you saw it at the beginning of this video, and it is a gorgeous layout that she created for Hip Kit Club. Now I have these beautiful DIY embellishment butterflies that my pen pal Jessica, I think it's Zevi, I think that's how you say her name. Hopefully I said it right, but I absolutely adore these butterflies. They are gorgeous. And so I have several pen pals that I love to correspond with, and every once in a while I get something really cool like this and I have to use it in a layout. So I was very excited to get this. I really appreciate this, Jessica. They're gorgeous, and of course I had to use them with some Cocoa Vanilla Daydream because I'm pretty sure that's what she used to make them. And so using the basic L-shaped design that Melissa did in her layout, we're going to use these two photos of my daughter Sophia with some blocks. Now these are the wood math blocks. I think they're called algebra blocks actually, or geometry blocks. I'm not sure, but they were a Montessori teaching tool that we had purchased when we were doing a lot of homeschooling. And while the purpose of them was to illustrate what a sphere looked like and just make math more intentional and visual, so you can actually see the shapes that you're learning about. And Sophia decided they were for building with. She's not wrong. That's what blocks are for. And I caught a couple of cute pictures of her playing with the blocks, and it just struck me as really interesting how when introduced to these old school type of toys, these learning and educational toys, they're just wood blocks. And she was so excited to play with them. And every time that this happened, when we were doing a lot of homeschooling, where the kids would just latch onto a technology-free and educational toy and just have fun with it, they don't necessarily have to use it the way it's been created for, but just having some fun with it, I was over the moon happy to see them enjoying a little technology-free time. Because while the TV's fun and video games are fun and all of that stuff, there's just something about using the imagination and being creative that I want to foster and encourage with my kids, and have always felt that way. So I'm pulling out what you may recognize as a giant bag of fussy cut florals because I'm a huge fan of fussy cutting. Huge fan. And I do have a tutorial with some tips and tricks for fussy cutting if you hate it or would like to try it and aren't quite sure how to get nice crisp lines and how to get nice and close cut on the patterned papers you're cutting apart. So I will put that up above this video and probably in the description if I remember, and you can go check that out. But I always prep my new kits and collections when I get them in, and that usually means fussy cutting anything that needs fussy cutting, so that when I pull the collection out like this to make a one-off layout, I don't have to do anything to prepare for the page. I can literally just start making. This layout came together really quickly because I already had these florals put together. And I'm going to be spending most of the time here trying out some different placement ideas, trying to get my photos exactly where I wanted them. And when I went back to glue everything down, tape everything down, it does shift a little, but the overall idea is there. This is a really fun way to start any layout that you have a couple of multiple photos to do, or maybe just one larger photo would work as well. And it's really just creating a decorated L. And it's such a fun idea, and I really think it really encapsulates my personal style, which I call whimsical linear. So it starts with a linear shape of some kind. In this case, it's two rectangles as your base, and then it becomes whimsical when you fill it with florals. And I tend to do a lot of that in my scrapping, a lot of very simple shapes, and then all of the fun things. And this really, really is in my wheelhouse. When I saw Melissa's layout, I immediately saved it because I knew it was one I wanted to lift. And actually, you may notice this is a 12 by 12 layout, even though they're pictures of one of my twins. Now, for my twins, I scrap in 9 by 12 because they're smaller. They're going to be smaller statured and are just smaller people. And so I purposely have given them smaller albums, a little easier for them to handle both now and in the future. And you might be thinking, Laura, you've done it again, because this is not the first time I've accidentally scrapped one of their pictures, one of their layouts rather, in a 12 by 12 instead of a 9 by 12. But no, this one's intentional. I'm going to be switching out some layouts on my gallery wall. And if you haven't seen this yet, it's on my Instagram and it's also here on YouTube in the community tab. I've posted a picture of my gallery wall with 12 shadow boxes filled with layouts. And so I'm going to be putting this one into one of the slots that I need to put away. And it's going to be a permanent resident, I think, because this design just spoke to me. I really loved it. I enjoyed putting it together, playing with all of the little bits and pieces, seeing what I could make fit, what would work. I was excited to get one of these little houses on the layout because those have been sitting in this collection for a while. I don't think I've used them, but maybe on one layout I've used them. And I have a bunch of them, so I was glad to get one more onto this layout. So Jessica, you'll be happy to know your beautiful butterflies will be adorning my gallery wall very, very soon. So I did put one of the photos up into one of the frames that came with the die cut pack, and I fussy cut out the solid white border a little bit closer to the florals, so it has more of a wreath look rather than just a frame. And so that top photo is a little bit smaller. I think I ended up cutting it down to about 3 by 3-ish, somewhere in there in the circle shape. And the one at the bottom I just trimmed a little bit because her dark hair was kind of taking over the photo, so I did trim it back a little bit there and then just matted it with a couple different papers. So because these photos are so dark, I do tend to use light and bright colors when I'm scrapping them because it helps them to stand out. And when I have really bright, bold colored photos that stand out really well on their own, I tend to keep the background fairly simple. And so in this case, it can be pretty busy because these dark tones in the photos will still draw your eye in and make sure they are the focus of the layout. Now I considered using this Happy Days as the title, and I have fussy cut that from I think from a pattern paper, but I couldn't find it later, so I'm not sure exactly what part of the Cocoa Vanilla collection this came from, but I did consider using it. However, it runs on a bit of a curvy line, and for some reason that was just didn't look right floating up in space. And so I end up scrapping that later and going with a more straightforward linear title to add my journaling underneath, just like Melissa did in hers. In addition to my florals and butterflies, I'm also adding in little suns and houses and frames and hearts. And then I'm also sprinkling some tiny, tiny little florals on the periphery, on the outside edges of the layout as well. And those are my scattering, those are my detail pieces. And those little bits and pieces kind of give it a more finished look. And I kind of equate it to adding the finishing touches on a cake where you're writing the name and maybe you add a couple little florals, you know? So if you're a cake decorator, you know what I mean. That's the last thing you do is put the words and the tiny little bits on the cake. And that's definitely how I see my scrapping as well, is that it needs those tiny little bits and pieces just scattered around the outside edges, and it just adds so much detail and such a fun little aspect too with those little bitty florals. Now yes, I did fussy cut those tiny florals because I'm a bit obsessed. I absolutely love the florals in this collection and they just make me so happy to play with. So right now I'm building up clusters. It's looking a little bit busy. I will end up pulling some of it back off. I end up up downsizing to just one house in that area by my photo because it felt a little bit too full. But I will kind of go back and forth on a few things and then simplify it a little bit. One of the little details I love on this layout is I have a small frame here on the right side, the bottom right, and instead of just leaving it open or empty, I tucked a little rainbow inside, and I just think that's just a fun little surprise that maybe you wouldn't be expecting. And it helps to bring the circles that are at the top left of the page down to the right and kind of balances them out. And so it looks like it's very intentional to have multiple circles on the page. Melissa did this as well, and I didn't realize it till I went back to look at the other layout to verify I had caught all of the details. I realized she'd done the same thing and brought that same circular element that's in the top left down to the bottom right, and that's perfect. If you can find a way to balance big shapes like that, it's helpful to make the whole thing feel more cohesive. So I did decide to go with this Little Moments title, and this was a die cut title that came with the collection. There's a whole bunch of, I think there was 29 different words in there, and these are perfect for putting together quick titles and not having to be super imaginative with the words you add to the layout. So now that I've got everything glued down, I'm going to go ahead and add my journaling using my T-square ruler. I had a couple people ask, yes, I have lost my journaling genies. I had these fantastic templates that helped you make journaling lines, and I had 2 of them and have managed to lose both of them, which is crazy because my craft room isn't even messy right now. So I think my drawers ate them. That is my running theory. So finishing it up with some splattering, have some controlled splattering with 2 shades of Nouveau, both gold, but one was glitter Nouveau and one was the regular gold Nouveau, and I used the glitter Nouveau around each of the clusters like enamel dots, and then I used the pale gold Nouveau as the centers of quite a few of the florals. I just thought that was a fun detail, and they needed a little bit of something to help differentiate the separate florals. So I'm going to add those and then a little bit of splattering with some gold ink, and this layout will be done. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Be sure to check out Miranda, where twice a month we scrap lift a design by some of our favorite creators. I hope you enjoyed this one. Until next time. Bye guys!